Welcome back to the channel. I'm Colin and this is a review of a set of new Ziigaat IEMs, the Ziigaat Crescent. It's a set of hybrid IEMs that retails for $279. The first thing that got me excited about the Crescent is that Ziigaat finally upgraded their accessories and cables to come with the Crescent. We'll talk about that later. The Crescent features 4 drivers and a 4-way crossover, each driver responsible for a part of the frequency range. A 10mm PET dynamic driver for sub-bass, and another 10mm LCP dynamic driver for the mid-bass and lower mids. For the BAs, there's one BA for the upper mids, and another BA for the extended high frequencies. So there's 2 dynamic drivers, 2 BA drivers, all working independently. Now let's talk about the unboxing experience and I'll tell you how it sounds. I was pretty excited about the unboxing of the Crescent, as Ziigaat finally upgraded their accessories. I've complained about their accessories feeling cheap in the past, and I'm glad they are now including higher quality accessories. The Crescent comes in a slightly larger box than usual. The packaging is very practical and straightforward. So inside we have the IEMs, a fake leather zippered pouch with the cables stored inside. We now have modular cables from Ziigaat, with unbalanced and single-ended end plug included. For the ear tips, we now have 2 sets of silicone ear tips, one in gray and the other set in clear color. Both sets have a similar shape and feel to them. They both are really grippy and soft. It feels a bit like liquid silicone tips, but a little bit thicker. These are much better than older stiffer silicone tips. By the way, the clear ones say BGVP on them. Now on the cable, the conductors feel similar to the old Ziigaat cables. According to the website, these are silver-plated copper conductors. The plug and splitter also looks nicer than old plain black ones. And most importantly, we now have a modular plug, which feels very solid and tight when connected. Now on the build of the Crescent, it's what you typically expect with Ziigaat IEMs. The Crescent has a 3D printed black resin shell and a hand-poured purplish black faceplate. The faceplate gives me a bit of Star Wars vibes. It kind of looks like an asteroid in space. The 2-pin connection is the normal flat 2-pin connection. The nozzles are metal and are the same ones used in the Lush and Arcanus. The Crescent has a vent on the top, and I never experienced any driver flex when I was trying them. Like other Ziigaats I have, they fit my ears very well and have good passive isolation. Okay, so here's how the Crescent measures on my Clone 711 coupler with stock tips. The frequency response is more of a flattened Harman tuning. The bass follows the Harman curve quite closely, though there is a tiny bit of channel imbalance on my set in the mid-bass area. The lower mid-range is boosted instead of having a dip as in the Harman tuning. This should increase the presence of vocals, making them sound a little more forward. The upper mid-range and treble area is less aggressive than typical Harman sets on the Crescent. Unlike typical Ziigaat sets we've seen in the past, the Crescent has a bit of a bump in the mid-range instead of being relatively flat. Let's talk about the sound quality. Usually when I try a set of IEMs for the first time, the first impressions are the most telling, as the brain doesn't have time to adapt to the sound of the IEMs. For the Crescent, my first feeling was the bass was super quick and punchy, and it had a very wide soundstage, which makes it present wide and open sounding recordings really well. And I think these are the 2 main characteristics of the IEM. Regarding the timbre of the Crescent, I find it pretty neutral throughout the frequency range. In general, the Crescent is very clean sounding. I don't find them to be warm sounding at all, just neutral. Transients are very quick and responsive. The bass of the Crescent has very good control in it. There's a good amount of sub-bass boost, and the mid-bass is quite clean. The bass is very snappy and clean, but it doesn't feel bass-light. There's a good sub-bass impact and energy in the Crescent, while the mid-bass is a little more tamed to maintain mid-range clarity. Compared to the Ziigaat Arete, the Crescent has much more control in the bass. It's quicker and more textured. That said, the mid-range of the Crescent sounds analytical and quite detailed. It's pretty much uncolored. I don't seem to hear any coloration or warmth in the mids. In fact, it sounds slightly dry and clinical, a bit like the mid-range you'd hear from studio monitor speakers. The Crescent does not have the velvety mid-range of the Lush, but is more revealing. The treble of the Crescent is again analytical and slightly dry. It's neutral and slightly more tamed than its bigger brother, the Arcanus. The Arcanus is hotter in the treble, but is also more resolving in the treble. I'm able to hear notes transition more clearly on the Arcanus, but the Arcanus may be slightly bright to some people. The Crescent, on the other hand, is more balanced overall tonally. The soundstage of the Crescent is something that immediately stood out to me when I tried it. It's really able to present the spaciousness in recordings that present it, both in terms of width and depth. It's not super spacious in every track like some IEMs, but you can really hear it when the track is mastered to sound open and spacious. I think the Crescent has the largest soundstage of all Ziigaat IEMs I tried. Imaging is also very good on the Crescent. Localization is very precise and accurate. The soundstage and imaging performance really impresses me on this. I think it's one of the key strengths on the Crescent. That said, I think these will be pretty good for gaming, though I haven't tried that out as I don't game. Comparing the Crescent to the Septet, a similarly priced set of IEMs, I immediately felt that everything on the Septet just felt slightly more relaxed. The bass lingers for longer, the vocals sound slightly further away and more airy, and the treble is brighter, and vocals can be a little more sibilant in some songs. The Crescent, in contrast, is really well controlled. Everything sounds tight and crisp. The soundstage width and imaging of the Crescent is definitely better though. These two measure quite similarly, but sounds quite different. I think it's a matter of preference. The Crescent sounds clinical and really controlled, and the Septet sounds more emotional or musical as some would describe it. Then I compared the Crescent to the Arcanus. The Arcanus retails for $399, which is about $120 more. I would say both of these IEMs are on the analytical side, unlike the Septet, which has more musicality. Comparing the two, I think the bass of the Crescent feels more substantial, yet being able to maintain the texture and clarity. The stage of the Crescent also sounds quite a bit deeper and wider than the Arcanus. The only thing I think the Arcanus does better is in the resolution in the upper mid-range and treble. It's a little more resolving there. That said, I would suggest people to get a Crescent instead of the Arcanus. I think it's just a better IEM overall disregarding the price, if you're looking for an IEM with this kind of tuning. For the cons of the Crescent, I think it's a very well-rounded set of IEMs, so this will sound more like a nitpick than a con. I believe some people may find the mid-range of the Crescent a bit clinical and dry sounding, so alternatively, it would be nice if there's a little more airiness and decay in the area. But that will probably compromise the resolution a bit. In summary, I think the Crescent strikes a great balance between musicality and technicality in the Ziigaat lineup. In fact, it's currently my favorite Ziigaat IEM. It has the musicality that Arcanus lacks, and the resolution and the speed that the Lush isn't as great in. The soundstage is amazing, the widest among Ziigaat IEMs that I have reviewed. The Crescent is the best Ziigaat IEM in terms of both sound and value in my opinion. I even prefer it over the Arcanus, which is Ziigaat's flagship IEM, so this says a lot about how I feel about the Crescent. So if you're someone looking for an IEM that does pretty good in everything and has a neutral tonality, I would highly recommend you to get the Crescent. It's the most well-rounded Ziigaat IEM I've ever tried, and it is my favorite Ziigaat IEM at the moment. So this is the end of the review. Please let me know if you have any questions about the Crescent. If you enjoyed this review, please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Thank you for watching.